This is the National Police Memorial. I'm in St James's Park at the memorial that honours the men and women of our police force who have lost their lives in the line of duty. The National Police Memorial was opened in April 2005 by the Queen and has the names of around 4,000 officers from the UK who have fallen in the line of duty. The film director, Michael Winner, was the patron of the trust and donated from his own money to have the first memorial installed in London. The Police Memorial Trust has installed over 50 memorials around the UK and 21 in the London area alone. As the son of a former Met Police constable, I know that the murder of a police officer is a crime like no other. It is an attack not only on the officers themselves, but also on the fabric of our society, an attack on both law and order and what the uniform represents. In this series of 7 videos, we will look at each of these 21 memorials in London, in chronological order, 3 per video, the tragic stories behind each one, and pay tribute to the officers who bravely gave their lives in the line of duty. There are a total of 27 officers honoured, 24 male and 3 female. Some of the memorials can be hard to find, and some are in unexpected places, and involve ranks of officers from constables to commanders. One of the murders remains unsolved to this day, and the police still have no firm suspects. Please accept my sincere apologies if I've missed any memorials that you feel should be included, and let me know in the comments. Please subscribe to watch all the 7 videos in this series. The stories in this first video will deal with a murder in Hyde Park during the Second World War, a murder in Kensington that resulted in what would be the last execution in Britain for the murder of a police officer, and our first story will be about what was described as the worst crime in British police history at the time, and even involved Winston Churchill. This is the story of the Sidney Street Siege. Sidney Street is in Whitechapel, East London. In January 1911, there was a siege in Sidney Street that involved the Met Police, the City of London Police, the Army, and the London Fire Brigade. However, the story of the events that led to this siege started a month earlier, December 1910, with an armed robbery in nearby Houndsditch that led to the death of 3 police officers and was labelled the worst crime in British police history. This is the memorial to the 3 officers who lost their lives on the 16th of December 1910, Sergeant Robert Bentley, Sergeant Charles Tucker, and PC Walter Choate. It is also worth paying tribute to 2 other officers not mentioned on the plaque who didn't die but had life-changing injuries as a result of the incident, as Sergeant Bryant and PC Woodhams. It was the evening of 16th of December 1910, and the residents of 120 Houndsditch could hear strange sounds coming from next door, number 119, which was a jewellery shop. It sounded like someone was trying to break in through the back door. The owner of number 120 went to the nearby Bishopsgate police station and returned with an officer, PC Piper, to investigate the noises. As number 119 backed onto properties in Exchange buildings, they went round to number 11 directly behind, knocked on the door, and an unfamiliar man answered. PC Piper had a brief conversation with the man and left, his suspicions aroused, and returned back to the police station. He returned to the jewellery shop a few minutes later, but this time with reinforcements, another 8 officers. The lead officer, Sergeant Bentley, knocked on the door of number 11 again, and it was answered by the same man, who then tried to shut the door in Bentley's face. Bentley forced his way in, and that is when the shooting started. There was a gang of men inside number 11, and they were in the process of using it as a base from which to break into the jewellery shop. They opened fire, and Bentley was shot twice and was killed instantly. As the officers followed Sergeant Bentley into the shop, they were also shot. Next was Sergeant Bryant and PC Woodham, who both received gunshot wounds and were seriously injured. Sergeant Tucker followed them and was also fatally shot. PC Choate grabbed one of the men and was grappling with him when he was shot multiple times in the back and leg by both the man he was struggling with and one of his accomplices. In the darkness, confusion, and seemingly endless hail of gunfire, one of the bullets struck one of the criminals, George Gardstein, and he had to be carried away by his friends and was later found dead in his lodgings. All of the murdered police officers were from the City of London force, but it was into the Met Police jurisdictional area that the gang made their escape. This led to a joint operation between the two forces to hunt down the gang. Never before had so many police officers lost their lives in one incident. The gang were Latvian anarchists, around 13 of them, and they were robbing the jewellery shop as a means to fund their terrorist activities. Within a few days, most of the gang had been arrested by the police, but there were still some on the run. On New Year's Day, the police received a tip-off that two of the gang, Fritz Vaz and Josef Skoloff, had taken refuge in a second-floor room at number 100 Sidney Street and were heavily armed. On the 3rd of January, in the early hours of the morning, a large number of armed officers made their way to Sidney Street. The weapons they carried were not really suitable for a gun battle, but were rather shotguns and antique revolvers. The senior officers were clearly expecting trouble, and they requested that no married men be part of the group. A gunfight soon started, and despite having the greater numbers, the police were outgunned due to the ramshackle nature of their weapons compared to the more powerful weapons of the two criminals, who also seemed to have an unlimited amount of ammunition. The Home Secretary at the time, Winston Churchill, gave the order for the army to be called in, and the tide quickly turned in their favour as the soldiers were better equipped and shot the second floor to pieces, and as the gunmen moved floors they were followed by a hail of gunfire. Churchill himself came down to the scene to have a look, and is rumoured to have had a stray bullet pass through his hat, missing his head by inches. However, historians have since questioned the validity of this claim. By 1 p.m, 100 Sidney Street was now on fire, and both Zvars and Skoloff had died, either by being shot by the army or burning to death in the building. Tragically, there would be one more death at the siege of Sidney Street. A firefighter, Officer Charles Pearson, suffered serious injuries when he entered the remains of the building and was struck by falling masonry and was paralysed. He died a few months later. A plaque to his memory is at the site where 100 Sidney Street used to stand. Nobody was ever convicted of the murders of the three officers. The three dead members of the gang, Gardstein, Zvars and Skoloff, were held responsible for the murders, and as they were already dead, the case was closed and the other members of the gang were acquitted. All of the buildings that were involved in the siege of Sidney Street and the initial murders of the three officers have been demolished. All that remains are these plaques to remember the events of those days. This memorial to Constable Jack Avery can be found in Hyde Park, on the wall of the old police building, just off of Policeman's Walk, not far from the Serpentine, close to the site of his murder. Jack Avery was a war-reserved constable, 28 years old, in only his first year of service with the Met Police, and was patrolling through Hyde Park on a sunny day in July 1940. He was alerted by a member of the public that a man was acting suspiciously near an anti-aircraft gun emplacement and was writing on a scrap of paper. Avery approached the man and took his paper away from him. The man, Frank Cobbett, a homeless labourer, responded by stabbing Avery in the thigh with a carving knife, seriously injuring him. Tragically, Avery died in hospital the next day from his wounds. Frank Cobbett was at first found guilty of murder and sentenced to hang, but had his conviction and sentence overturned on appeal due to his low IQ, and ultimately only served 15 years in prison for manslaughter. This is Onslow Square, South Kensington. It's the location of this memorial to Detective Sergeant Raymond Purdy. The memorial is not easy to find, hidden behind a pillar outside a block of flats. The murder of D.S. Purdy is notable for a couple of reasons. Firstly, the culprit tried to use amnesia as his defence, claiming to have no memory of the murder, or even of the events leading up to it. And secondly, the defence clearly didn't work, as he became the last person to be hanged in Britain for the murder of a police officer. The culprit, Gunther Padola, was born in Berlin in 1929 and was a fanatical member of the Hitler Youth. He also lived in Canada for some time and has spent most of his life in and out of trouble with the law everywhere he went, mostly for theft and other petty crimes. Once he moved to London, he styled himself as a gangster and took on an alias, Mike Carlato, to hide his nationality. He had burgled a house in Kensington, the house of an American model, and had stolen some furs and jewellery, but offered to return them to her in return for some cash. She refused to pay and called the police. It was when D.S. Purdy and other officers arrived and attempted to arrest him at South Kensington Tube Station that he ran to 105 Onslow Gardens, hiding behind this pillar. The officers quickly found him, but during the struggle he pulled out a gun and fatally shot D.S. Purdy. D.S. Purdy was 43 years old, married and had 3 children. Padola would escape the scene of the crime, but was arrested a short time later. At his trial, he refused to enter a plea, claiming no memory of the crime, saying he had a head injury as a result of being beaten by police officers after his arrest, but this was not supported by the expert witnesses who said he was feigning his illness. The jury took no time to find him guilty. The judge sentenced him to death, and he was hanged, aged 30, at Wandsworth Prison just 4 months after the murder on the 5th of November 1959. The death penalty was suspended in 1964 and completely abolished in Britain in 1969. Thanks for watching. Our next video will include the story of one of the most notorious massacres of police officers in British history, and 2 tales of officers who lost their lives to the actions of the Irish Republican Army, the IRA. Please subscribe to see the other videos in this series, and also check out the other videos on the Offbeat London channel.